Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Carrie. Thank you for being here. Today's off to a rough start. We've been fighting microphone. If it cuts out in the middle of this, I genuinely don't know what else to do. We are fighting construction, air quality, light, microphone. I just want to talk to you about books. Is that too much to ask? So I'm going to do just that. And it is somehow already the end of the year or closing in on it. So I thought I would go over the fantasy books that were most anticipated this year to just sort of see how they hold up. Or actually, let me correct that. Not just the fantasy books, anticipated books in general. 99% of them are fantasy because it's me we're talking about. But I have a few disclaimers to make before we completely dive into it. I'm going to be using the tier ranking system, but that doesn't mean that I am ranking any of these. I'm not comparing any of these books to each other. I think, people have asked me before why I don't use a numerical system in terms of like giving books 3 stars versus 4 stars. I tend to approach each book with a very different mindset and a very different way of reviewing something. So if I were to use a numerical scale, my 3-star for this book would not be the same as a 3-star for another book. So hopefully through this, I'm going to try to explain myself in terms of why they're ranked each way. Not all of my top tiers are created equal. Not all of my bottom tiers are in there for the same reason. So if you happen to skip around in this video and you are gobsmacked, shocked about the rankings of some of these, I hope that you go back and listen to my reasoning. Also, final disclaimer, these are not all of my most anticipated reads. I started writing them down and I got well into the 50s in terms of how many books we were going to talk about, and I just couldn't do that. So I narrowed it down to 30. There are still so many anticipated reads that I haven't even read yet. Authors are just pumping out books recently, so I haven't gotten to some of them. Some of them are written by my friends, so I don't want to be biased and talk about those. I don't want to rate them. And also, some books are brand new debuts, and I don't want to, especially if I had a negative experience with them, I don't want to bring them up again. So if you want every book I've ever read this year, I always do a monthly wrap up. So at the end of each month, I'll talk about them. If I gave a book a kind of negative review and it was a young debut, I don't need to harp on it again here when I have plenty of other books to talk about. So if you notice any books are missing from this list, that is why. Lots I haven't gotten to, some I don't want to talk about, and there's just too many. This video is already going to be long. So that being said, I'm going to open up our tier ranking. If I even remember how to do this. My God, it's been a while. Okay, first and foremost, talking about the tiers. Starting from the bottom, we simply have disappointed. Disappointed. Need I say more? Next up, at first I was trying to just do 3 tiers, like great, okay, and bad. But I realized in the sort of mid section, I had a high mid and a low mid. So the okay is just like a low mid. It was meh, but maybe forgettable. Okay. And again, each book will have its own reasoning. Very middle is, it is what I ordered. It's what I expected. All right. That's fine. Above that is thank you, mommy. Because thank you, mommy. These were great, like fine, pretty good, I would say. And then finally is exceeded expectations, which again, I'm not very original when it comes to my tier naming. It means it exceeded my expectations. So I'm going to go through them actually by release date. I couldn't figure out how I wanted to structure this. So I'm doing it by release date. I have this on my phone. Are we prepared? Hold on. Let me restart my camera. So we're going to start off strong with our February 2025 releases, starting with the one, the only, the Ali Hazelwood Deep End. I was just anticipating this simply because Ali gets so excited about her work. I think that's one of the many things that we lost with her getting off of social media is the kind of madness behind everything, the fact that she was desperately trying to get this named Wet. I mean, she's absurd in the best ways. So I always look forward to an Ali Hazelwood. If you want like a proper review, I believe that would be in my February wrap up or March. I'm putting it in Thank You, Mommy. I was actually surprised based on everything I knew about this book. I didn't think it was going to be for me. It was good. I would say it's closer to This Is What I Ordered. Should I put it in This Is What I Ordered? Oh no. This is what happens when I start talking. You know what? Now that I think about it, okay, I'm going to put it in This Is What I Ordered, because even though I kind of had low expectations for it and it exceeded those, I will say it was still just mid. I'm thinking of doing like an Ali Hazelwood ranking video so I can kind of talk about my thoughts more in depth. But I'm going to actually start it with It's What I Ordered. It was better than what I expected because I expected it to not be my cup of tea. She was fine. I was giggling. I was having fun. That is Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. After that, this one hurts. Next up is First Time Caller, and it's our first Disappointed. This one hurt more because I love B.K. Borison. Love Light Farms is a rare reread book for me. I always love the banter, the characters, everything about it. Something about First Time Caller just missed the main male character. I know nothing about him, and everything I do know I don't like. She put so much work into making the main female character, Lucy, I think her name was, making her so strong and so interesting, and just I wanted to be her friend, and she had such a rich life outside of the radio show. This is a romance about a radio host and this woman who calls in for help, and they end up starting a radio segment together and falling in love. It was just so unbalanced in terms of character development, and Lucy was just way too cool. It's one of those things where you have a best friend that's really cool and she's dating just like a whatever kind of guy.
One is a stunningly beautiful woman with dark hair and a fierceness that's both scary and inspiring. The other is a guy.
That's how I felt reading this, and it wasn't what I expected from B.K. Borison. So I do, however, have hope for the second one because I think that couple in this world would be cute. But in terms of the first book in this series, a disappointment, unfortunately. February was kind of a miss of a month, unfortunately. The next one I will be talking about is, if I can find it, Rebel Witch, which will also be going in Disappointed. I enjoyed A Crimson Moth in the way that I knew my middle school self would have eaten that up. Rebel Witch is a enemies to lovers story about a witch versus a witch hunter. It's a duology, so this was the finale. I was just shocked by how we did not care about the plot anymore in this one. It was all very obviously forced proximity, basically. It felt like the story was written for the sole purpose of getting us to those scenes. It wasn't plot driven, it was like smut driven, and it wasn't that compelling. The twist was, I thought, extremely obvious, so it didn't feel like there was no excitement near the end. I was just really, really let down by this one. I don't really even remember what happened in Rebel Witch, other than like they're on a boat and so they have to live in tight quarters for the first part of it. I don't know. So that was Rebel Witch. Also because it was the final book in the duology, like there wasn't going to be any next book to kind of bring back our characters or bring back the story. She closed the book on that one, and I didn't enjoy it. And our final February letdown, unfortunately, is Our Infinite Fates. So this one I only heard about through other booktubers. I think that the UK got this book either before us or they did like a really big marketing push for the UK. And I follow mostly British book talkers, like short form content. Most people are from the UK, so I get a lot of their stuff. I was hearing nothing but amazing things about this book. It's about what happens when, I don't know if that's a spoiler, hold on. It is described as the invisible life of Addie LaRue meets This Is How You Lose the Time War, in this fantastical love story that defies death as two souls reincarnate throughout the centuries, and they always fall in love, but they always die or like kill each other, or one of them kills the other by the time they turn 18. And then they just start over again in like different bodies in different places and different times, which sounds really interesting, even though I feel like Addie LaRue now is just like a red flag for me. Like anytime someone says it reminds them of Addie LaRue, I end up hating the book. But yeah, this one was just kind of nonsensical because of the way that it kept restarting the story. I never felt like I knew the characters because the characters always changed and there wasn't enough kind of consistency in them. I didn't enjoy it, and the twist was really strange and it just didn't feel mapped out enough for it to be a standalone. It felt like it was trying to do way too much and it didn't achieve anything. So that was another disappointment, unfortunately, just because of the hype of, I think, the book community. And I think that kind of could be a whole nother conversation in terms of like paid partnerships, in terms of like marketing a book, especially when people are reviewers. How do you balance marketing a book that you're like paid to talk about, but also giving a review of it? A lot of times people are marketing books before they've even read them, and then the books aren't good. So yeah, I feel like this is one that it got me, where people were talking about how excited they were for it without having read it yet, when I need people to be like, I read it and I'm still excited about it. So that is our Infinite Fates. But the good news is then we head into March of 2025, and one of my most anticipated reads of the year came out, and it did not disappoint. And that is The River Has Roots. Going in exceeds expectations because I honestly had unknown. I didn't know what to expect. This was beautiful. I don't think it's for everyone. I had the most incredible time with it. This is by Amal el-mohtar, who was one of the writers of This Is How You Lose the Time War, one of my favorite books of all time. And so I was expecting something lyrical and beautiful, and this was exactly that, but in a completely different way than I thought. This is much more fantasy fairy tale, whereas This Is How You Lose a Time War was a bit more sci-fi. This is a story essentially about sisterhood and about magic and songs. I believe there's even in the audiobook, I believe there's even singing of the songs that are in this book. Yeah, it's about love, and at times it seems like it's going to be about romantic love, but it's really just about the love between sisters. The magic system in this is really interesting because it's based on grammar. And so the words that she uses to describe performing magic is all like grammatical forms. So you are talking about conjugating and things like that, different tenses. And it was just short, but really powerful and really just a joy to read. I really had fun with it. So this is like a contender for one of my favorite books of the year, actually, just because it was exactly what I needed at the time. And I think that you'll find that that really matters in terms of my reviews, is sometimes the books just were not coming to me at the right time. But this one absolutely did. So that is The River Has Roots. Following in those footsteps, the same month, March 2025, we have my absolute queen, Tracy Deonn, coming in with Oathbound. Oathbound is going solidly in. Thank you, mommy, because thank you, Tracy. Oathbound. So if you're not new to this channel, you know I love Legendborn. I love that series. Oathbound, I think people had a lot of mixed feelings about, and I understand them. I ended up doing a complete reread. So I read Legendborn, Bloodmarked, and then Oathbound. So I think my review is a little skewed because I was just so happy to be in that world again with all these characters, reliving it. It took up like a full week, if not more, of my life, and I just had so much fun being there. That being said, Oathbound definitely was a kind of change in tone. We expanded our characters. We went on a lot of side quests. We had a lot of time jumps as well. And our character Bree is in a really rough place in terms of her character arc. So I think a lot of people didn't really vibe with that. I'm coming at it from a point of like, I get it. I get why this book needed to be written, because this is going to be 5 books. And this really felt like it could only have been expanded to 5 books if we had Oathbound. I really think it's going to help the 4th and the 5th book. It was just kind of a rough point in the story for the reader, for all of the characters. I do this is another series in which I wonder why the expansion happened. I don't know if it was, I don't think Tracy ever confirmed whether it was going to be 3, 4, or 5 books when she started it. I believe it's now confirmed to be 5. I hope so. But this is one of those books that I wish it could have been done in a trilogy, because I think this kind of pulling apart of the story and expanding things could go either way. I have a positive outlook for the 4th and 5th book, but Oathbound, I personally had a really good time. I think that Tracy is very good at showing realistic characters. Bree is not like the perfect hero. She is dealing with a lot and she's on her own. Like nobody is helping her figure out her life. And so in this book, she's really kind of frustrated and making weird decisions. And she's being a young woman who is in an extremely stressful situation. And yeah, I got it, Tracy. I'm with you. I get it. I see the vision, and I can't wait for the 4th book. So that is Oathbound. Thank you, Mommy. Mommy being Tracy Deonn. Ooh, controversial. Also in March 2025, we have our first okay. Just okay. And that is for, hold your horses, Sunset on the Reaping. So I talked about it. I gave a deeper review for it, but essentially for me, as someone who grew up with the Hunger Games, I was in high school when these books and movies were coming out. I feel like I grew up with the characters. It was a very important part of my childhood, or my young adulthood, I guess. This one felt, I said it, and I think it triggered some people, so I apologize, but I'm going to say it again. A lot of it felt fan service-y. It felt like we were getting the backstories of some characters just for the sake of like fans like these characters. It just felt, I don't know. Maybe I'm also just not a huge fan of prequels. I've found that it's very rare for me to enjoy a prequel of a story that I already like. But this one, I understood that there were a lot of important messages in there, but it just kind of felt, it didn't feel like nothing is going to feel as strong as the original trilogy, especially just the first book. And this one just kind of felt like we were telling the first story in a slightly different font. Also, I talked about it with the love interest. She's never on the page. And so much of Haymitch's story about how tortured he is about being separated from the love of his life. And so much of the story is him being like, you guys have no idea. This girl is perfect. And it's like, yeah, Haymitch, we don't have any idea. We don't know anything about this girl. So it just felt, I don't know, I felt very removed from everyone. I do have favorite characters. There were absolutely standouts. I do think the film is going to be great. I just saw the trailer. It looks amazing. So I'm like, I get why people love it, but for me, it just really fell below my expectations. Yeah, I felt like such a hater, but it just wasn't, it wasn't for me. But very excited for the film. That is Sunrise on the Reaping. Next up, and this is why I'm saying that I don't want to compare these books to each other. Each of these books, I am coming at them with a fresh slate, okay? So I just talked about Sunrise on the Reaping. I'm going to talk about a different book and I'm going to rate it higher. Just please know that I am not comparing any of these books to each other. Thank you. Because I'm going to place The Ragpicker King by Cassandra Clare in what I ordered. If not, thank you, Mommy, actually, because it was better than what I expected. The first time I read Swordcatcher, I thought that Cassie Clare bit off a bit more than she could chew. This is her first attempt at building a world that isn't Shadowhunters after writing in the Shadowhunter world for decades. This is her first adult fantasy, and I thought that what she was doing was a little strange. There were, I can make a whole nother video about Swordcatcher and what was going on and blah, especially the world building and the use of language in this. So I went into Ragpicker just sort of being like, let's just see what she's gonna do. I think I saw a piece of fan art that kind of swayed me to pick it up. And I will say Cassie Clare came back. I think that Swordcatcher felt like it wasn't it was missing elements that everybody loves from Cassandra Clare. And I feel like she brought it back in like the best and worst ways in the Ragpicker King. So Swordcatcher is about, Lord, how do I even explain this? It's an epic fantasy where we have people who can change their appearance. We have body doubles. We have, God, what on earth? We have like gangs and political intrigue and magic. I don't know. There's a lot. That's one of my complaints is like, what are we doing here, Cassie? But the Ragpicker King, I think she figured herself out. And this is also where she turned on the classic Cassandra Clare romance. And again, I say for better and for worse. Like, it was the Shadowhunter romance that she always does. That messiness, center stage. Yeah, if you're just interested in like romantic drama with a weird fantasy backdrop, the Ragpicker King was better than I thought it was going to be, which is why I put it in. This is what I ordered because it was. That's what I wanted from her, and it's what she gave me. So that is the Ragpicker King by Cassandra Clare. And my final March read was I Am Made of Death. I'm going to put this also in just okay because I really want Kelly Andrew to move on from her world that she created because every book that she writes is a standalone but also connected. She doesn't, or, you know, the publisher, the marketing team does not communicate that very well to the reader. So it's been 2 books in a row. I have read 3 of her books. 2 in a row, I have been probably 75% of the way through. And then the entire cast of characters from the first book appears and are playing very important roles. So if I had not read the first book that she ever wrote, I would be very lost in terms of like, who the hell are all of these people? Like a giant new cast of characters inserted at the final 2/3 of the book. I think that's a little odd. And I don't love how this keeps getting connected. I'm Made of Death, just in terms of the story, the strongest part were the characters from the first book. I didn't love this in any way, shape, or form. It just sort of felt like instead of doing world building or character building, she relied on these tropes to let us know who each character was gonna be. Like, obviously, the 2 main characters were going to fall in love, but we didn't get any of that work to see why they did. It was just like this inevitable, well, they're the 2 main characters of this young adult fantasy. So that's that. That's kind of how it felt. So yeah, I do have her next book highly anticipated for 2026. Like, I still love her writing. I just wish that she would let her characters go. I don't really know what to do about that. That is I Am Made of Death. Then we enter April. One of my most anticipated reads comes out. This was so highly anticipated that I actually held off from reading the book that came prior to this because I knew I wanted to read this entire series in one fell swoop. It's a trilogy. I knew if I read the second book in the trilogy without having the third one out yet, I would have died waiting. And thank God I did wait, because what on earth was this? I'm talking about Holy Terrors by Margaret Owen. I'm going to put it in, I don't even know where to put it. I'm going to put it in This Is What I Ordered, but also it kind of wasn't. This is such a complicated book to review because this was the strangest experience I've had with a series. I love Little Thieves. If you've heard me talk about Little Thieves, you know, one of my favorite books, like in terms of a young adult fantasy. So good, so funny, but also handling such dark topics and handling them well, and with kind of humor, but also kind of the seriousness that it deserves. So good. I knew that this was going to be a trilogy. I read Little Thieves and I was like, I love this so much. The next book, Painted Devils, was already out, but I didn't want to read it without Holy Terrors also being out because that would have been torturous. And I was correct, because Painted Devils was a very huge shift in our characters and the story, and it was very strange. And then we have a huge time jump to get to Holy Terrors. And I've talked about this before, but if you're going to read this, to get from Painted Devils to Holy Terrors, there's actually a like short story collection that she put on AO3 as like optional reading, like just some fun other reading. In my opinion, That is absolutely essential to understanding the plot. Short story collection covers the literal years that we skip jumping from Painted Devils to Holy Terrors. It was diabolical, honestly, that it wasn't included in the traditionally published work. Like, I love it when authors give us bonus content, but this didn't feel like bonus content. This felt like essential content. So it was just really bizarre. So the whole reading experience, I was just quite confused because I love these characters with my heart and soul, but what they went through and what their character arcs and things like that, I ended up just not really liking some of my favorite characters by the end of this book. It was a really weird experience reading it. Just in terms of the writing style, absolutely loved it. But in terms of some of the choices with our main characters and just with the plot in general was very frustrating. So I will always say, just read Little Thieves like a standalone, because you totally can and you totally should. If you want pain and confusion, continue the series. So Holy Terrors, I wish I could tell you more, but I literally don't even, I can't explain. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. It's what I ordered, but I also want to return it, you know? I feel like I'd be a happier person if I didn't read Painted Devils and Holy Terrors, but I'm also so glad that I did. So I don't know, man, it's a very confusing review. It's a very confusing feeling. I'm still processing it, and I read it in April. So and this was another, just like Oathbound, I read the whole series from beginning to end. So just being in that world for a few weeks was so insane. So yeah, let me know your thoughts, because I know we've all talked about it throughout the year, but if you finally read it, still open to anything you have to say, because what an odd experience that was. Holy Terrors by Margaret Owens. Next up, we had one that was a surprise. This was a anticipated arc. I really wanted to get an arc of this. I was given the arc of this. It did not disappoint. In fact, you might say it exceeded my expectations. That is The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. This was so trippy. I don't think this book would be everybody's cup of tea, but it was absolutely my cup of tea. It is about a medieval city or castle that has been under siege for a very long time. They have run out of food, they have run out of water, and we have one woman who is in charge of figuring out how to fix their food supply. She's figured out how to fix their water supply, and so now that's her whole thing, is she's going to figure out how to feed them. We also have another woman who is her bodyguard / knight, who really wants to be on the battlefield, but for reasons unknown is being charged with all of these indoor activities, and she fucking hates it. So she is watching over our little mad scientist as she works. And then we have another woman who is running around. I literally picture her like scurrying through the walls. She's just like a really bizarre character who is hell-bent on getting revenge for reasons we will uncover. But their stories all sort of intersect. And the story is essentially asking what happens when you are praying to your God to save you from this horrible life experience. And what if they answer? And what if they are maybe not great gods? So while this city is under siege, the gods that they pray to just roll up. And it gets crazy. It's one of those books that you don't know if the characters are hallucinating or are the things they're seeing real. Are you hallucinating? Are you just not understanding the book? It was a real trip, and I personally loved it. I had so much fun. So that was The Starving Saints. If you're looking for a kind of medieval horror mind trip, got you. After that, totally switching gears. Next up is Problematic Summer Romance. And you know what that was? It was just what I ordered. I think that both of these books from Allie this year were neither of my preferred tropes, but I do just like how she writes characters. And so even though I didn't particularly like this story, I did enjoy reading it. I wouldn't ever return to it, but I get why she wrote it, and I think that she did a good job. And that's that. Like, Allie, she's never fully let me down. She might write a book that I'm like, okay, that's going to be a one and done. I'm going to read that, never again. But she's never actually let me down. So this was another one of like, okay, I wanted an age gap romantic comedy. she gave me an age gap romantic comedy. So no complaints. It's just I got what I ordered. So Allie at it again. We then hit the midway point. We are now in our June releases. And unfortunately, this was also an arc. So I read it sort of before I heard any other reviews about it. This one, I kind of already had low expectations about it because once again, it was compared to Addie LaRue. Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil was okay. I've talked about it before, just personally, I feel like this wasn't the book for me because similar to my issues with Addie LaRue, I have found that perhaps I just don't like stories that involve immortality and that stretch centuries as we're trying to tell this story. Also, a negative about this was that it's a multi-POV book, and I felt like some of the POVs were extremely stronger than the others. There was one that I just you could have erased it, truly. This is a story about vampires, 3 women across time. Their stories, their lives intersect in very strange ways. It's a sapphic romantic, I wouldn't say it's a romance, but it is a romantic vampire novel that again spans centuries and just didn't hit what I want. It didn't hit how I wanted it to. There were certain points, especially I thought the modern day POV I really liked. I won't go into if you want my full review, you can find it in my monthly wrap-ups. But yeah, it just unfortunately too long for what it contained. I don't think it ever really wrapped up. And the ending, so mad. Truly so mad at that ending. So that is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. A miss for me. But I think if you are an Addie LaRue fan, give this one a go. Because I do think a lot of it is just, it wasn't my taste, unfortunately. So Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, V.E. Schwab, still love ya, but would love to not do the immortal storyline anymore. Next up, we have a huge surprise. No one is more surprised than me in terms of how I'm going to be ranking this book. I will put The Listeners in Exceeds Expectations. This is by the same author as The Raven Boys, so I like her writing, but this was her first adult work and the premise sounded very odd. This was so fun to read. The Listeners is about a hotel in Appalachia during the Second World War, and this is a true thing that happened, is the US government, when we entered World War II, we had all of these diplomats, like German, Japanese diplomats, people from the Axis powers in America, and what are we supposed to do with them? So a lot of Japanese diplomats, German diplomats, etc. were sent to all of these luxury hotels in the countryside. So we're following one hotel manager in the middle of Appalachia who runs this luxury hotel as she tries to keep it running with obviously rationing and things like that happening in the war. How are we supposed to maintain a luxury style hotel with a literal world war going on? But also, how do you house and act hospitable to people when you are simultaneously sending your young men off to war to fight them and they are dying there? I mean, it was really, I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel. This book read like a Wes Anderson film. Something about the way that she wrote this was the only way I can describe it is I felt like I was watching the Grand Budapest Hotel in a very strange way. It was really remarkable. I really enjoyed it. I think that the ending, I'm not sure in terms of the actual story, how much I liked it, but the reading experience, the way that she wrote this, I really liked it. So exceeded expectations in terms of I had the time of my life reading this. Would I read it again and like it as much? Maybe not. Again, the story, I barely even remember how it ended, to be honest. I read this 6 months ago, but truly no one is more surprised than me. That is The Listeners by Maggie Stiefvater. Okay, our next book actually came out in July, but I read it just a week ago in November. So this is a fairly new review. I haven't even talked about it yet on this channel, so you're getting a preview of what I read in November. But I read Silvercloak, and what's interesting is that this is by the same author as Our Infinite Fates. Our Infinite Fates, I believe her author name was Laura Stevens. Silvercloak is written under the name L.K. Stevens because I believe that I know that this was her adult work, so I think that she kind of does what V.E. Schwab does, and she uses two different names to like differentiate young adult and adult. But yeah, this is by the same author. So 2 fantasy books in 1 year, and they got quite different reactions from me. Is quite interesting. I currently am putting Silvercloak in thank you mommy, but it may get lower just because I tend to have like a honeymoon period with books right after I read them. Silvercloak is an adult fantasy. It is about a girl hell-bent on revenge. She structures her entire life about getting into the kind of police force, like the detective squad in this fantasy world, so that she can go after the gang that was responsible for killing her parents when she was 6 or 7 years old. Really cool premise. I enjoyed so much of it until I really turned on my brain and until the ending. This is a case of an enemies to lovers situation, and normally when you have a person who is a villain that you know is going to be the romantic interest, you at least assume that they have a reason for being evil, and that's sort of the whole point of this book, is that like no one is born evil, something must have made them this way. Let me just say, without spoiling anything, when it is revealed what made our villain this way, let me just say, wouldn't have swayed me. I was just kind of unimpressed. It made that character feel a little pitiful and evil. Is that the point? I don't know. But yeah, the ending was strange. It's the beginning of a series though, so I think the series could get better. Also, just in terms of like how a gang works, I wasn't quite convinced by that either. It felt like this could have used a little bit more research into like how does undercover work happen? Like how does undercover work? It was a fun thing to read, but when you actually start thinking critically of like what was going on, it wasn't that strong, but I enjoyed it at the same time. This was also like, I just hadn't really read much in October or November, so this was just like a book that I devoured, which felt really good. So I think part of my enjoyment of it was just that I was reading again. So like I said, that probably will fall by the time that I film my November wrap up. I might have a completely different feeling towards it, but it was not bad. Even though it's ranked really high. I don't know how to explain this, but yeah, that is Silvercloak by L.K. Stevens. A book that I didn't really have high or low expectations for, and was neither high or low on my list. Just throwing this in real quick. A Forbidden Alchemy. It's what I ordered. I was promised a Peaky Blinders fantasy. That's what it was. This is going to be a duology, which I didn't know going into it, which was horrific to realize once I got to the last chapter. This was a good time. I do still say there is a huge time jump in the beginning that I didn't agree with. I think that it weakened the plot. We meet our characters when they are like 10. They discover a very large secret that their government is hiding from them in terms of how magic is distributed through their kingdom. And then we kind of fast forward and meet them as their lives have taken 2 completely different paths. One is very anti-magic, anti-establishment, anti-government, and one is very like, I hate what's happening, but I desperately want to be on the inside, not the outside. You know, and when their stories converge and they fall in love, what happens? Like I said, it was fine. I liked a lot of the characters. I liked a lot of the banter. It wasn't as strong as I wanted it to be, but it was fine. A fine read, again, without any high or low expectations. It was what I ordered, so no complaints. Next up, we're going to have some back-to-back disappointments, unfortunately, in different ways. So first off, I talked about this really recently, so I don't want to go too deeply into it. You can listen to, I believe it's what I read in September. The Bewitching is going in disappointed because that should have been a DNF, honestly. I've talked to a lot of my friends about this, and we all kind of agree that Mexican Gothic was the high point, our experience with this author, and every single book has kind of gotten lower on our rating scale. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on. But this was about witches, 3 different POVs in 3 different historical contexts that I was very interested in and enjoyed. It was supposed to have a lot of Gothic influence because Silvia Moreno Garcia always does. It was like a murder mystery. It had all the elements that I loved, and it didn't deliver on any of them. Like I said, I've talked about this already, so I don't want to go too far into it, but our villains were very obvious, and so it made our characters look naive and dumb, which is not what they were supposed to be. We do have a taboo relationship, I suppose, without giving any spoilers, which is something that Silvia Moreno Garcia does more than once in her books, so that was kind of, I should have expected it, my bad. And so yeah, it wasn't thrilling, it wasn't mysterious, it wasn't scary, it wasn't interesting. I just don't know what was going on with The Bewitching. So I was extremely disappointed because I thought it was going to be great, and it wasn't. Speaking of which, another green cover, another letdown. I'm putting this one in okay. All right, Katabasis. Yeah, I did a whole reading vlog about it. I gave it a review, but I also gave you my live reading reaction, and I think that that's very important because the way that I felt about this book, it had the highest highs and the lowest lows. I did not have a really fun time reading this because I think what I expected from it, it didn't deliver. And what it did deliver, I didn't like. So it's in the okay, it's in the low mid tier because there were moments of brilliance. This is about 2 graduate students who journey into hell to get their academic advisor back so that he can write their letters of recommendation so that they can continue on their path of academia. So much of it was boring. I loved the beginning, the middle. Anyway, watch my live reading reaction if you really want to know. But an unfortunate letdown. That is Katabasis by R.F. Kuang. We're almost finished, folks. The light is getting out of control. I can't. No excuses. It's just bad, okay? We're almost done, though. We're down to our last quarter. Entering August 2025, we have Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher. This was just what I ordered. Gonna be real. This was a fairy tale retelling, and it was just that. I liked the characters, but it really didn't stand out in terms of how much I love T. Kingfisher. It's not going to be anywhere close to my favorites. It really wasn't that memorable. It was fine if you're looking for a cozy, quick, standalone fantasy that is a fairy tale retelling, but wasn't anything other than that, unfortunately. So that was Hemlock and Silver. I also read that right after Katabasis, so I feel like I was just in kind of a salty mood. Following that, we have The Possession of Alba Diaz, which came out in August, but I think I read it much later. Thank you, Mommy. I was surprised by this. I had a really good time. Do I think that there was so much left unsaid, left unexplained? Yes. This was not a perfect book. Did I have a really good time reading it? Absolutely. This is a gothic tale set in Mexico. Our main girl is engaged to someone that she respects. It's kind of like a childhood friend. She doesn't love him romantically, but she thinks that in terms of a marriage, it could work out. There are layers of drama to this decision, but that has to be kind of swept aside because the city they live in is struck by essentially a plague, and they all relocate to safety out where the family's silver mine is located because it is very far away from everything. And is that not the first ingredient to a good gothic tale, is being isolated from society? There might be something lurking in the silver mines. There might be, like I said, layers and layers and layers of drama. I don't know why, but I liked it. I have so many questions. Again, not a perfect book, but I enjoyed. It was what I needed at the time. It was spooky season. The Possession of Alba Diaz. Okay, next one I read as an arc. I read this very, very early in the year. This actually came out in September. I am still confused by what I read. I genuinely cannot believe that this is a final draft that they published, and that is A Land So Wide by Erin A. Craig. I actually like most work by Erin A. Craig. She wrote The House of Salt and Sorrow, House of Roots and Ruin, The 13th Child, I believe. I've liked everything that I've read by hers. Maybe not my favorite author, but I've always enjoyed, especially the atmosphere that she can create. So A Land So Wide is her first adult romance. She did Small Favors as well. This was her first adult work, and premise-wise, absolutely should have been my favorite thing in the world. The story starts with a very kind of The Village-esque feeling, where we have a small community that lives, I think, off the coast of like kind of a Halifax, like somewhere northeastern Canada, I believe. And it's this small community where they have to be inside at a certain time, because if not, something that lurks in the forest will get them. And what happens when the love of her life runs off into the woods and isn't seen from again? She has to go get them before the evil things kill them. This was so interesting. Like that whole setup, loved it. I love that atmosphere, that particular kind of atmosphere. I love, and I thought she did really well. And the second things start to go fantasy way and things are, the stakes are supposed to be higher, the emotions are supposed to be stronger, we got none of that. Any kind of world building, not gonna happen. Any kind of like a character arc, not in sight. It was the most bizarre book I've ever read. Like the second half felt like it truly was like a first draft. And I do not understand what I read. I read this as an arc, so I was hoping that it maybe was going to get some edits or something. I don't think it did. I don't know how, like it truly felt like this needed to be cooked for another year. I was just gagged in a bad way, because what was that? What was that? So that is A Land So Wide. If you read it now, because when I reviewed it, it hadn't been out yet. If you have now read it, let me know your thoughts, because I am still like, that is probably one of my most mind-boggling reads of the year, because I was so excited for it and it had such a strong start. And it needs like another category. It needs something below disappointed, like truly just confused, truly confused at the editor. A Land So Wide. But an arc I did get my hands on and did enjoy was The Second Death of Locke. I'm putting it in thank you, mommy. I'm still kind of in a honeymoon period with this book. It could go down. If I reread it, it certainly would. I think my opinion would change. I had just been in a drought in terms of every book I was reading was a miss. I was not having fun. I missed especially my fantasy reads. Nothing was hitting kind of in the middle of the year. And so I read this and it was what I wanted it to be. This is about childhood friends. In this world, there are magic wielders, and then there are like the wells that hold the power, and they like feed off of each other in order to create magic. And these childhood friends work together, they fight alongside each other. It's got a lady knight, and it's a story of maybe mistaken identities, a world in which magic might be dying. There was a lot going on. I just really liked it. I do agree with the feedback that most people have, which is the ending was not as strong as the beginning. I think the beginning was excellent. So good. And yeah, the end was definitely a tone and pacing shift, but I still had a really good time with it. And I also just love this author's writing. This was a book that came to me at the correct time. I think if I had read it at a different time, my feelings would have been changed. But this was a case of I was thirsty for some good fantasy, and this was a pretty good fantasy. So thank you, mommy. Mommy being VL Bovolino? What's your name, girl? Bovolino. Also wrote My Throat an Open Grave, which I liked. So The Second Death of Locke. After that, real quick, because I talked about this very recently, speaking of wanting a good fantasy and being delighted with what I was given, our next book is Wild Reverence, which is absolutely going in exceeded expectations. This is a prequel to the Divine Rivals duology. I had a rough time with Divine. I liked the first book in Divine Rivals, and I was so incredibly let down by Ruthless Vows, the second book in Divine Rivals. So when I heard that her next book, but I love her writing. So when it was announced that Rebecca Ross was coming out with another book, very excited. When I heard that it was a prequel to Divine Rivals, very not excited. So I had very mixed feelings going into this. This was so good. This was about a goddess who falls in love with a mortal who they know each other through their dreams, sort of. I don't want to go too far into it, but it felt very similar to the way that I feel about Juliette Marier's writing, which is the highest compliment. This was just lovely. It felt like an old story. It felt like something I had been told before, but also brand new. And I just love her writing. I don't think this will hit for everybody because the pacing of it was a little odd. Most of the characters are gods, and so gods are very fickle and they're immortal, so they're just kind of messed up in the head, and they make these big sweeping gestures. They're just like insane. So you're dealing with a cast of characters that most of them are insane. So I think that kind of threw a lot of people off, which I totally get. But for me, really, really enjoyed it. That is Wild Reverence. If you didn't like Divine Rivals, if you haven't read Divine Rivals, none of it matters until you get to like the epilogue. And then the epilogue kind of leads into a piece of the magic in the world of Divine Rivals. It doesn't even really have an effect on Divine Rivals as a story. So yeah, you can totally read that as a standalone fantasy and have a great time with it, which I'm extremely pleased by. So that is Wild Reverence, exceeded expectations. Thank God. Following that, another fantasy I had fun with, To Clutch a Razor. What did I put you in? I put you in Thank You, Mommy. Okay, Veronica Roth. Thank You, Mommy. I really enjoyed When Among Crows. This is a very short urban fantasy by Veronica Roth. We are following witches and vampires and knights, and it's all tied to Polish or Slavic mythology, so they're not exactly vampires, but they're kind of the equivalent. I really enjoyed it. My main complaint was that it was way too short. It was like 100-something pages. So when To Clutch a Razor came out and it was slightly longer, I was like, Veronica, I'll take what I can get, but girl, write more, because I really enjoyed this as well. I loved how she continued the story. I loved the themes and the things that she worked with in this book. But again, it feels like I mentioned this before, but it really feels like I'm reading chapters from a bigger book that I love. It's cohesive. It's not choppy writing, but it just feels like this should have been a larger book and we're just getting little snippets. I love the characters. I love the modern settings. Sometimes modern settings mixed with fantasy are hit or miss for me. This does it really well. There is the tiniest touch of romance, just enough to fall in love with their love story and demand more. Yeah, I can't wait for her to continue this. I want the next one to be longer, please. But yeah, To Clutch a Razor, I had so much fun. So if you're looking for a new fantasy series, and they end in a way that isn't stressful. Like, they don't end on cliffhangers, so you can read this and not be like traumatized waiting a year for the next book, which I really appreciate. So that is To Clutch a Razor. The first one is called When Among Crows. I highly, highly recommend. After that, really quickly, because this was a bummer, and I know that not everyone feels this way, Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber is going in disappointed. I kind of knew it was going to be this way because I just don't think her writing suits adult. This is a story about a girl who is in a college class about urban legends in Hollywood, and she discovers that some of these legends are real. And when she is trying to interact with some of these legends, she is given a prophecy that she's gonna die real quick. I think she's got 48 hours unless she finds this magical object. And so of course she goes on this adventure to hopefully save her life. She at no point really feels very worried about this. if you've got like 48 hours to live, I think I would be in a much more panic state. She's a little bit more chill. I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't like the setting. I don't like stories about LA or Hollywood. I think I didn't like the characters. I didn't think she needed so many love interests. I didn't understand. Like, there were so many things that were not explained, and not in an intriguing way, more of an did she forget to explain this to us kind of way. Her sort of whimsical style of writing that I love just did not fit in this kind of story. And yeah, nothing about it. I didn't like anything about this. I did though get to hear her speak when I was in Edinburgh. I went to one of her events, and I just love her. Her explaining what went into this also, actually, I do have a bit of gossip about this. She was talking about, this is a story that's been cooking for years. She has had this in her mind for upwards of 5 years. I think she was talking about like during COVID, this came to her, but she was also she was finishing the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. And so a lot of the ideas that she had for this book accidentally got put into Once Upon a Broken Heart. So she like wanted to have, no spoilers, but like amnesia was going to be used in this book, or like certain other things. And instead of like saving them for the book that she wanted them to be in, she just like put them into Once Upon a Broken Heart. So I think that some of those elements could have made this book stronger and sort of honestly weakened a lot of Once Upon a Broken Heart. So it was very interesting to hear that. But yeah, I am excited that she's excited about this story, but it really didn't work for me. And that's upsetting because I love Stephanie Garber so much. So good luck to her and the rest of the series, but I will not be continuing. That is Alchemy of Secrets. One story I did have fun with though, speaking of writing style that I love and that I don't think is for everyone, Exceeded Expectations, Hazelthorn by C.G. Drews. This really will not work for everybody. It worked for me. This writing style is so ridiculous, delicious, over extravagant, so literally flowery. Everything about this is very botanical. Hazelthorn is a kind of, it's not body horror. I think they call it botanical horror. We are following a character that lives in this mansion, and his guardian dies. And in the will, everything is left to him. But there are some stipulations to the will that causes some issues. He also, in a kind of Knives Out situation, the entire family's pissed that he gets everything. So there's just like lurking danger, romance, secrets. So good. But like nothing is simple. You cannot say the door opened. You know, it had to be like the door squeaked open with a gasp it had been holding for years, or like something like that. It's really, really flowery language I needed at the time. I really, really loved this. And that's 2 in a row for me for C.G. Drews. I also really liked Don't Let the Forest In. So yeah, it came to me when I needed it. Couldn't be happier. That is Hazelthorn. Somehow we have reached the final 5. We are now in October of 2025. And I unfortunately, do I put it in disappointed or okay? I'm gonna put it in disappointed. You might know what I'm talking about. The Night and the Moth. I know it hit for some people. I am not one of those people. I was extremely disappointed by this book. I really liked One Dark Window. I loved the imagery of this. Everything about the scrying and any kind of like cult-ish religious community, I'm always going to be there for it. It was really great in the beginning, and then it quickly just let me down. I did not enjoy the quests. I feel like we went on way too many quests, and I feel like they were paced in the strangest way, and they were over so quickly. Like everything works out for our character. It just felt like there were no stakes. The twist wasn't surprising at all. I didn't understand the romance. It was more of just like hot emo knight is immediately in love with our main girl and we don't really know why. I don't know. I just had a lot of questions. I didn't really understand our characters. I didn't really like them, and I didn't like the story. I didn't like the pacing, and it felt kind of like a copy paste in terms of plot points for One Dark Window. It was very much one of those quests where like this group of people need to collect X amount of items, and that's what they did. I wish I liked it, but I was so let down. I really felt like if it wasn't Rachel Gillig, I would have DNF'd this, which is crazy. So that is The Night and the Moth. I understand a lot of people love it. I wish I was one of you, but I'm not. Turning it around though, thank you, mommy. Thank you, Olivia Blake. This one might fall later because I read this recently and had a good time, and you know, I could feel differently very soon. But I liked this. Girl Dinner, Olivia Blake. This is dual POV. We are following two different women. One is a professor who is in over her head in terms of trying to be a professor, trying to be a mother, trying to be all of these things, struggling with womanhood in that way. And then we're following a student who's trying to get into a sorority, and she is also struggling with like what it is to be a good woman. And I just thought it looked at womanhood from so many different lenses, and then the ending is one that I'm still thinking about. Like at first I didn't like it, now I think I get it. Somebody commented being like, I didn't like it because it was all about white women problems, and I fear that's the point. My battery's about to die, so I'm gonna switch cameras, but if you read it again, I think the entire point is that it's about white women problems. But talk to me about it in the comments, okay? That was a thank you, mommy. I read it while I was in Edinburgh, and I had a good time. My only complaint is that there wasn't enough cannibalism. I was promised cannibalism. I don't think I was given enough of it, and I know Olivia Blake could write us a good cannibal, so still waiting for that one. But yeah, that was thank you, mommy. Didn't quite exceed my expectations, but it was really good. And now for the rest of these are ones that I haven't spoken about yet because I read them in November, so you're getting a little sneak preview. All of these were highly anticipated. These are all authors that I love, have hit before, and I was very excited to see that they were releasing books this year. So starting with Fallen City by Adrienne Young. This, what did I mark it as? Okay, all right. Yeah, I guess so. Oh, this is so hard. Fallen City is going in, I'm putting it in okay, but my heart is almost telling me to put it in disappointed. Mostly disappointed because this is the start of a series, and so I know I'm not going to read an Adrienne Young book that I like for at least another year because she's going to be focused. It's the same thing with The Night and the Moth. Like when you don't like the first book in a new series by an author you love, it hurts extra because you're just like, damn, they're going to be focused on writing this and I'm not going to get something else, you know? So Fallen City could have been so good. This was truly an issue for me of the pacing, I get, the formatting, maybe. Fallen City is sort of like a Greco-Roman inspired kingdom that is falling apart. We've had a rebellion and we are entering the very last stage of the war against these rebels and then the last holdouts, this kind of upper echelon of society that has managed to hold on to the city. And we're counting down the days until the rebels move and take over the city. We are getting not only two POVs between our main male and female character, but we're also getting two different timelines. We're getting a flash back and a flash to present. And so we know that these two characters were deeply in love in the past. We see that love story happening. And then we see when the rebellion happens, they end up on different sides. They share the same ideology, but they are choosing, one is choosing to fight from within and one is choosing to lead the charge from outside. What ends up happening is I am not connected to these characters. It was truly the dual timeline of it all really didn't work. I don't know why she didn't just tell us the story either from the beginning or have like one big flashback. It was just like every other, it was like I forget their names, but like the boy before, the girl before, the boy after, the girl after, the boy before, the girl before, like so choppy. I never it was so frustrating to read because I was like, this romance could have been so good. This, like, even we didn't even really get into discussing the politics other than the fact of like the people in power are shitty and the lower class suffers, and that's that. Even like the magic system, it wasn't explained because we had to keep doing all this jumping around, and I just don't think we needed to jump around that much. And so I was very let down by this. The potential was so there, and unfortunately, because of the choice in formatting, I really think it was a mistake. It wasn't good. It wasn't good, and I love Adrienne Young, and that's crazy. So that's The Fallen City. Honestly, it should, I'm gonna move it. Fuck it, I'm putting it in disappointed. I didn't understand why it was taking me so long to finish a book of that length. It took me probably 3 or 4 days to read 100 pages, and that's not, I usually read 100 pages in the first day, if I like a book. So yeah, this took me a really long time to get through, and I chalked it up to just like my post-trip, I have no attention span, but I fear it was just the book wasn't for me. So that is Fallen City by Adrienne Young. Devastated. Speaking of not great, I'm gonna put this in okay. Past Carrie, what did she think? I put that in disappointed. All right, well, you know what? 2 disappointments in a row. House Sapphire. This is by Marissa Meyer. Marissa Meyer loves to do a good fairy tale retelling. Didn't like this one. This was partially a case of, this is a young adult book that felt very young. So partially I wasn't the correct audience for it, but also just the writing in general was bizarre. I think I liked the premise. It's about 2 witches that are hired to do an exorcism of this haunted house, but they're actually like fake witches. They do have magic, but like not the magic that would allow them to perform an exorcism, but they are broke, and so they agree to go work for this guy because he promises them a lot of money. And sure enough, the house is haunted, and our witch, her one power is that she can talk to ghosts. So it was kind of cute. She would talk to these ghosts. It was like basically all of these wives that were killed by this crazy man, and so they were all quite funny, and she would talk to them and be like, girlies, can you like make yourself visible and be like, oh my gosh, this witch is doing such a good job, things like that. So there were moments that were really cute, but I don't think anything that she was attempting to do was completed, in terms of the fact that this entire story hinges off of the fact that a man murdered multiple women in cold blood simply to gain power, or maybe he's crazy, I don't know. That all comes to light in the end, but I don't think it really talked enough about that, about women and the violence against them. It was really bizarre that was such a focus, and then like we never addressed it. In my opinion, I don't think it was addressed. There were like a couple twists and turns that I thought were, from the moment they were introduced, very obvious and not at all a mystery. Just overall, it totally missed. I thought the beginning was really interesting, but I found myself skimming real hard near like the middle part, because I was like, I know everything that's happening, and the ending didn't do anything for me. So let me know your thoughts. But The House Sapphire, a miss. And now we have reached, oh my God, my most anticipated book of the year. Last year, was it? Or a year prior, when I read 6 Deaths of the Saint. That is a short story. What is that? 30 pages? 60 pages? It's a diabolically low number of pages. My favorite book of the year. Story of the year. What Alex E. Harrow did, crazy work. So when I heard that she was going to be taking that story and expanding it to be a full-length novel, part of me was excited. Larger part of me, not. Because I thought the story was perfection, and I didn't think she needed to mess with perfection. I'm nervous to talk about this. She wrote The Everlasting. It came out October 28th. I was in the midst of my traveling, so I did not read it. I put it off for about 2 weeks. I read it. I finished it a couple days ago. I think brilliant, how she decided to change the story. The changes that she made to make it a full-length novel, I thought were really good. The way that she told it was a new story. It was the same core, but I thought it was quite new. We're following a historian who writes about this legendary character. As he is writing about this legendary character, he may or may not be thrown into her orbit where she is stuck in this kind of immortal loop, where if you've read Six Deaths of a Saint, you kind of understand what's going on. I liked it. What did I put it in? Thank you, Mommy. I assume Alex is Mommy. The Everlasting, I put it in Thank you, Mommy, because I do think I loved this book, okay? I had a great time reading it, but I do think that in a story where you are repeating yourself over and over and over again, it does get a little tiring. I think there was maybe the third or the fourth repetition. I was sort of like, I get it, but how do we speed this up a little bit? I don't know how to explain it. I really liked it, and I think it would be really worth a reread, but there was absolutely a part, probably from 60% to 80%, where I felt a little bored. But looking back, I find that very interesting because that is the section in which their lives are kind of boring in a good way. For them, I would say, for our characters. So I do find that kind of interesting as like the reader of a story, someone who wants to be entertained by these characters when they are having a normal moment. I'm sort of like, let's get back to the story, guys. So I think I had a very like meta experience with this book, and it really makes you think about the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we want to hear, what is a hero, and yeah, I loved everything she did, but I did, to be quite honest, I did find myself bored for a section of the book. But I did love it. Her writing style is superb for this story. The sort of repetition just in her writing, the way that yeah, I really, really loved this. There were just parts that weren't perfection, where I feel like Six Deaths of the Saint, the short story, I had no notes. Was I devastated? Do I love this? Would I read it again? 100%. I'm just always going to be a little protective of my sweet little 30-page story that was just changed my life. So that is The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. And there we have it, folks. Those are the 31. Who snuck in there? I chose 30. Okay. Anyway, those are some of my most highly anticipated reads of the year. Once again, didn't cover them all, didn't talk about some of my friends, didn't talk about some of my debuts that I maybe didn't love. So I did read more that I had highly anticipated, but again, if you want to know my thoughts on every book I've read, I have a playlist. Every single month I talk about all the books that I read, so hopefully you are able to choose wisely, pick the ones that you want. I actually just had a book event. We did a little book swap here in Seoul. Somebody came up to me and literally was like, I love you because I disagree with like 90% of what you say. And that's how they choose what to read, is they choose to read the things that I don't like, which is great. I get it. Like, I have friends that we're very similar, or we're very different, similar in that way, in that we disagree on all of our books, and that's fine. We can respectfully disagree. Anyway, let me know what you think of these. Let me know what you're anticipating for 2026 so that I can get my library holds list ready. A lot of things I just couldn't get my hands on, to be quite honest, which is a good thing. I love that people are using their library, but honestly, San Diego County Library and the Philadelphia Library, girlies, remember, we're reading quickly. We're returning on time. All I ask, okay? Anyway, yeah, sorry that this video was a bit of a mess. The lighting, etc. It is winter, and the light that hits my house is beautiful to live in, impossible to film in. So I'm trying to figure that out. I want next year to be a little bit more professional. I thank you for your patience while I figure my life out. And yeah, thank you if you came to the book events, the book swap or the book talk, anything like that. Hope to do more of those in the upcoming year. Yeah, just let me know. What are you reading? How badly do you disagree with me? What the hell was Holy Terrors? And yeah, I feel like I'm finally I've been like running consistently since I got back from Ireland. I feel like I've just been like, I've had so much to do. So I feel like today, once I edit this video, I'm gonna take a breather. I am going to breathe. And then hopefully I can come back with some less chaotic content, or, you know, chaotic in a different way. So yeah, that's my story. Those are my thoughts. Give me some books to put on hold. You know it. I will see you guys next time. Looking forward to 2026. We've got some great books coming. So I will talk to you next week. Love to you always.